Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learnings. I am super excited today with a gentleman that I've got, Mike Coulter. Mike will introduce himself in a second. Why am I super excited? Well, because I came across a podcast by a gentleman called Jim Quick, KWIK, and he interviewed another gentleman called BJ Fogg. And BJ Fogg talked about tiny habits. And it really, really resonated with me. And I took an awful lot from it. So much so that I downloaded the audiobook, got loads from that, got loads of notes here from it as well. So if you're listening, sorry you can't see the notes. If you're watching, obviously you can. Mike is one of the disciples of BJ Fogg. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
You went over to America, so just offline we were discussing. You went over and actually you did a couple of courses with BJ, and you ended up in Silicon Valley as well, which is fascinating. So today we're going to talk about tiny habits. We're going to talk about human behaviour and behaviour design, which I'm fascinated. But Mike, please introduce yourself, and thank you so much for giving your time. Lunchtime today. Really, really grateful. So thank you.
My pleasure, Stephen. Thank you very much for inviting me. Hi, everybody. Yes, nice to be here. I hope I can be useful and add value today. I don't know if people get a chance to ask Q&A at the end of it, Stephen.
Yeah, so we've got comments. So if anybody wants to comment, if anybody wants to add questions, that's great. So we've got a couple of people join, say hello. Hi, Kiri. Thanks for joining. Kiri's in Northwest London, has a great agency there. Hack's in Sheffield, so thanks very much for joining. So please give Mike some love, some shares, tag some people in, because actually Tiny Habits works for every single person in every single walk of life. And actually the behaviours and the human behaviours and the behaviour designs that we're going to talk about here, it works for all of us. So actually, I know, I try to look at estate agents and help estate agents and letting agents, but this applies to every single person in every single walk of life, whether it's us, whether it's actually our kids as well, because if we can create the tiny habits and make a differences in their lives, as parents, is going to make a massive difference. So very excited, very excited.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. Now, I think you make a very important point there, and it's the fact that what I found with Tiny Habits was that it's kind of like a universal method of changing our behaviour and learning habits, irrespective of the habit, and irrespective of who wants to change the habits. And I found that super useful. So I'll give you a little bit of background to me, and then I'll explain in a little bit more detail two things. You get a two for today. One is I'll explain about Tiny Habits and how it impacted my own life. But more broadly, in understanding how my own behaviour worked, I was kind of getting an insight about how all human behaviour worked. Colleagues, clients, and customers, even competitors. Because Tiny Habits comes out of work from BJ Fogg, which is called Behaviour Design. And behaviour design for the last decade at least has been the secret source of some of the biggest successes of Silicon Valley. I'll tell you a little bit about my Tiny Habits journey, and then I'll tell you more widely. That's great, Mike, about Tiny Habits, but how do I bring these insights to the day job, working with clients in the estate agent business? So, a little bit of backstory, very, very quick. My whole career, I worked in advertising marketing. I was an advertising creative director. And more recently, is about 2015-16, I was working for a business called the Do Lectures. And the Do Lectures are a little bit like TED Talks, but for cool people. And it's this amazing kind of conference and publishing empire that works from everything from small one-man bands to big multinational companies. And it's effectively how we might use modern tools of marketing, social media and whatever to build our businesses. And I was tasked in about, it was 2016, I was creative director of a project to write a thing called the Side Project Report. The Side Project Report was a deep dive into some of the most successful companies on the planet that have come out of side projects, not the main event. Many of you will be familiar with the platform Slack, the comms platform. That was just a side project originally. It's now a billion-dollar valuation, but that's just a side project of a gaming company that wants to keep everyone on the same page in terms of the developers. So I got a great project. I had 3 months to do it. The money was great, fantastic brief.
Oh, Mike, I just got a comment just to say the volume sounds muffled. So I don't know if you'd be kind enough to come a little bit closer.
I happily do it. In fact, give me a second, mate. I'll just try and do even better than that.
There you go. Thanks, Kiri, for that. Hi, Tom. Thanks very much for joining us. Appreciate it. I know you're a big fan on Tiny Habits as well. So thanks very much. Grateful. Mike's just going to get his a mic. That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
To make it a bit better.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, just a second. Oh God, it's not working now.
Okay, well that's a lot clearer. Kiri, is that better for you?
Any improvement there, folks? Is that what? Any feedback there for?
Give us a thumbs up if that's better, please. That'd be great. Thank you. Hi, Dawn. Thanks very much for joining us.
I should be talking so people can hear it. If we get the thumbs up, is my sound all right, folks? Now?
Yeah. So Kiri's giving it a thumbs up. So
I'm sorry about that. Okay, and I would just try and get the. Okay. So yeah, so I was explaining that my tiny habits changed. So I had a massive project, and I needed to be on my A game, and I wasn't on my F game. You know, the usual stuff, and particularly creative people seem to be prone to this, but not exclusively. You know, drinking too much, sleeping badly, crap diet, not exercising enough, all the stuff it is to be a human being when things aren't going very well. So something had to be done. How could I possibly do a good job on this project when things weren't going too great for me? So I knew about this guy called BJ Fogg, a professor at Stanford University, who'd come up with a thing called, in his own life, called Tiny Habits. A really quick and effective method to build strong, positive new habits in his life that seemed, frankly, a little bit Californian and unbelievably easy to do. And still has a free 5-day email-based course where you design some tiny habits within, when you're monitored, you're coached by email, and see how it goes. So I thought, you know, I'll try anything. So I signed up for the course with a view to helping me, you know, have a sort of happier, more kind of effective life using his methods, so I could do a good job on the project. So I did the course, and lo and behold, it clicked. Something in it clicked, and it really, really kind of worked for me. So I did another 5-day course the week after, and I did 3 or 4 over the 3-month project. At the end of the project, absolutely knocked it out of the park. Something changed in me, fundamentally transformational, and I thought, blimey, I've discovered a superpower here. I need to know more. So I want to know, where's the workshop I can go to? Where's the books I can buy? Because being an advertising creative, I've always been interested in getting more information on something that it works. And I couldn't find any workshops. I couldn't find any books. I could find blog posts and stuff on Google stuff, but I couldn't find what I needed. Like, I need to know more about this. All I could find was a relatively expensive course through a thing called the Tiny Habits Academy in California, where I could actually train to be the Tiny Habits coach that I couldn't find in the UK. Subsequently, I found out that there were 2 or 3 coaches at that time in the UK, but then I thought, sod it, I'm just going to pay the money and learn to be a coach. So I signed up. Class was midnight every Tuesday night on Zoom, in the early days of Zoom. So it was 4 p.m. California time, and I just spent the time trying to learn to be a Tiny Habits coach. And lo and behold, a couple of months later, I certified, and then thought, this is amazing. I can now go and build my business on this, which I did. I was a Tiny Habits coach for quite a while. That was the main source of income for me. And I particularly focused on creative people because my background, I understood the problems and challenges of being a creative person. And effectively, Tiny Habits is turning on its head a lot of what we're told about behavior change. As human beings, and I know I did for decades, and literally decades, thought that it was the no pain, no gain, go big or go home, set the New Year's resolution and grind it out and get the habit established. And to be frank, that never ever worked for me. And I think there's some research that says 80% of New Year's resolutions crash and burn by February the 1st. So I found this method, which was the opposite of what I thought behavior change was all about. I used to think behavior change was about being motivated, highly motivated to change, when in fact, motivation is not the first thing we should look at. What Tiny Habits does, it says, make the behavior you want to do as simple as possible. Believe in baby steps. Pick something you want to do every day. Make sure you're going to be consistent about it. Make it really, really tiny and grow it from there. It's like planting a tiny seed, plant it in the right spot, and it'll grow naturally. And I did that with exercise, and I did that with my sleep, and I cut down on drinking, and I started eating better. And by all measures, everything changed by scaling everything back, as opposed to what I'd thought for years was go big or go home, really go for this, might be highly motivated. So my big insight in behavior change was that, and this is one of the maxims, I guess you could call it, in behavior change, simplicity changes behavior. And I got fascinated by this whole notion that simplicity changes behavior. So I thought, well, BJ Fogg designed Tiny Habits in his own life. Where did it come from? And I found that Tiny Habits is actually a spin-off for BJ Fogg's work in Silicon Valley. And he's something of a father figure with some of the biggest, most successful companies in Silicon Valley in terms of influencing human behavior. And he came up with this thing called the Fogg behavior model, where effectively he identified how human behavior works, all human behavior. And I got really interested in this because I thought, having worked for 20 odd years in advertising, nobody ever told me how to influence human behavior or how it really, really worked, which seemed a bit of a kind of an oversight. And then I thought, well, anybody, whether they work in sales, whether you're an estate agent, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a teacher, wouldn't it be a good idea to at least have a look at how this guy thinks human behavior works? Because it's actually influenced some of the biggest successes in Silicon Valley. They're applying it. In fact, one of BJ's students at Stanford in, I think about 2007 was a guy called Mike Krieger. Mike Krieger actually dropped out of BJ Fogg's behavior design class to go and start a business. And that business ultimately became Instagram. And Instagram is built on BJ Fogg's models and methods of behavior change. And I'll explain a little bit more about how that works in a second, but just getting back to my story, with Tiny Habits, I realized that by getting some new habits in my personal life and seeing some improvements in just sleeping and being a bit more relaxed and a bit less stressed out, my work improved. I was showing up fresher and brighter and more creative for work because I'd put these things into play in my personal life. So there was a massive payoff in my professional life. And then when I looked into behavior design, I thought, well, what more can I learn from this guy? Because I've learned so much already, but how can I use it working with clients and customers? And how can I look at the competition and why are they doing better than me and what have you? So I came across this thing called the Fogg behavior model. And essentially, it's in 2 sentences. It explains how human behavior works, all human behavior. Your kids, your competitors, your clients, your colleagues, your own behavior. And essentially, the 2 sentences are this. Behavior happens when 3 things come together at the same moment. There's motivation to do the behavior. There's ability to do the behavior. It can't be impossible. And there's a prompt or a trigger or a cue, the thing that says, do this behavior now. And I looked at this, I thought, can it be really so simple? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, yeah, it is, all human behavior maps to that. And if a human behavior or something isn't happening in one of my clients, for example, let's say I send an email trying to set up a meeting or pitching an idea for a project. If the behavior isn't happening, it means that one of the 3 things, motivation, ability, or a prompt, isn't happening. So if I've sent someone an email, hopefully they've read the email, I know the prompt is getting there. So if they're not answering it, is it something to do with their motivation or is it something to do with their ability? Bear in mind what I said before, simplicity changes behavior much more effective than motivation. But in my whole career, I tried to motivate people to do things. When in fact, motivation is great to get people to do hard things, and it's great when people have the motivation and it's high. But it's harder to motivate someone compared to making it easier to do. So, for example, when I try to drive business and go after prospects, say in emails, I'd look at my emails and I have these 7 and 10 paragraph emails where I was throwing tons of stuff at people. I wasn't making it easy for the person to do something. And through looking through the lens of behavior design, I realized that if I needed to get, say, my clients, or wanted to influence my clients to do something, I had to make it easier for them to do it, not do it. So eventually I'd break down an email that used to have 7 paragraphs into a sequence of behaviors. And the first behavior would simply, can I get them to answer this email? Because that was the first problem I had. A lot of people weren't answering the email because I was kind of overfacing them, was asking them to do too much. I was making it too hard. So a success to me then became just getting an answer to an email. Because if I couldn't get an answer to a simple email saying, hey, have you got 5 minutes for a coffee or a Zoom call or something like that, I was never going to get them to do the big behavior. So it's not about motivation. It's about sequences of discrete behaviors, one leading to the other. And this came out of tiny habits. Believe in baby steps. So, for example, if I take my exercise, so I say, right, old Mike would say, right, I'm going to start running 3 times a week. New Year's resolution, I'm going to start going to the gym 3 times a week. That's fantastic. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But in tiny habits, it might just be, I'm going to buy a pair of running shoes, or I'm going to get my existing running shoes, put them by the door, or actually, I'm just going to put my running shoes on when I walk the dog, or I'm even going to just walk to the end of the street and back. Scale it really back in tiny baby steps. And here's why. If I can't get myself to consistently do a tiny thing, what do you think the chances are of getting myself to regularly and consistently do a big thing? Not going to happen. And that's what I found by tiny steps, that by breaking it down into discrete steps, we can then grow that into the big score. And that's effectively how behavior design works.
100%. And I would just want to relate this to the estate agents that are watching. So thanks, Adam, for saying it's much better now. Hi, Mario. Thanks for watching. So again, one of the prompts that I've been saying to estate agents, or one of the most important things the estate agents need is properties. So, you know, again, thanks, Oliver, for watching. You know, put in the comments, would you agree with this? So we all need market appraisals. Give us a thumb up if we all need market appraisals. And we know that that's the case. If you don't have market appraisals, you don't have instructions, and you don't have any to sell. And then I always ask the estate agents, so are you doing at least 1 hour of business generation every day? And actually, if the scary thing is, the answer is no. So for me, a little prompt now is actually on your keyboard when you're signing in your computer as a prompt to remind you to do it. It's just put in password 1 market appraisal a day. So yeah, you've got the prompt in front of you now to think, right, actually, if we can get 1 market appraisal a day, it's going to make a massive difference to our business. And that's just a small prompt. And for me, you know, again, to relate it, because this made a massive difference for book. Thanks, Adam. So this has made a massive, massive difference to me, was my prompt when I came down the stairs was I wanted to write a gratitude diary and do 10 press ups. So when I came downstairs in the morning and I hit the kettle, that will be to turn the lock of my office door, to go in there, to get my diary, and to write the 3 things I'm going to be grateful for today, what's going to make today a great day, and a positive affirmation. And then I do my 10 press ups. And then I know that it was done. You know, again, the consistency with the lunchtime learnings, you know, now it's become into a habit where every Tuesday and Thursday the consistency is there. I didn't know it was going to come into a big habit, but again, the prompt is, right, I need to get a guest. Okay, who do I get? You know, you've been a fantastic guest. I'm really grateful for you being on there and sharing it. But I had a small prompt. My motivation is actually I want to help people. Okay, you know, and it's having the ability to do it using this medium to make a difference. So, and it's creating that behavior. And I want to help people. I want to help people be a better versions. And just coming back and I suppose picking the bones of what you said, I love the fact where you said simplicity changes behaviour. And again, I've had a fantastic guest on here as well, who's John McGrath, who's McGrath Estate Agents in Australia, who is the best estate agent I've ever come across. And he says estate agency is very simple, and sometime in life we just overcomplicating things. And it's just taking those really tiny, as you say, those baby steps that make a difference. It's like a lot of estate agents have fear of doing videos, of getting in front of a camera. And actually it's just doing that tiny step, whether it's just switching it on and hitting record and just doing it to yourself. That's a start. That's, and making that start and making it happen.
Yeah, I think we find that, don't we, that invariably, like in life, the number of times we think once we're started, we're up and running. It's actually get started. There's a couple of points I've made there. You make really good points there, Stephen. Is in the Tiny Habits model, we talk in the concept of recipes. So a recipe is like it's a systematic way of remembering to do the tiny behavior. And a recipe, actually, there's a formula to it. And the recipe is we call Tiny Habits essentially breaks down into three things: an anchor moment or reminder, which is essentially the prompt to do the thing, whatever the thing is. That's the first thing. The second thing is a tiny version of the big habit you want. And the third thing, which is a bit wacky in California, but I promise you is really important, it's called celebration. It's how you wire in a positive emotion when you're doing the tiny behavior. Because neuroscience tells us that's how we get ourselves to do the thing again. And it's not just in neuroscience. Look at sportsmen. Look at how a sportsman celebrates when they get a hole in one or an ace in tennis or a basketball or score a penalty, how they absolutely crank up their celebration. Now, this is two things. It's a natural thing we do. Look at how we cheer when we teach a baby how to walk, and what the baby does when it's celebrating those first baby steps. But equally, sports psychologists drum it into their professional athletes that you coach. Feel good when you do the thing. Even football, look when people are substituted in a match, the guy being brought off even celebrates and slaps the hand of all the team there so that they feel good about the thing. Because the neuroscience of this is that feeling good when you do anything, why is it into your brain that will do it again? Because dopamine is released in your body and it feels good. It's also the reason why we like chocolate so much, or a few pints or a glass of wine. It feels good. So it can work, on the dark side of life as well as the good. But if you can hack your emotions and feel good while you're doing the thing, you're more likely to do it again. And if the thing's only tiny, then you're more likely to do it because you're not giving yourself a big ask. So one of the things I do, I don't have the property. I bought in fact, give me 20 seconds.
So again, if you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Mike, write them in the comments so I can ask Mike as we go along, please. Thank you.
So Stephen was talking about referrals and things like that. It'd be great if you could allocate time in your diary sometime during, I'm sure, a very busy week to do an hour on referrals. But why not just start with 1 minute or 2 minutes? What I do is, if I've got to do my VAT, which I hate doing, or any financial stuff in the business I hate, I have this thing here. It's a little cube. It's a timer. And these are minutes. And I say, right, sod it. I'm going to do this. No argument, no debate for 5 minutes. And I put that on my desk and I pile into it. And I'll get all my receipts out and be all over the place. Things like that. 5 minutes and I'm done. And the alarm goes off. And I think, you know what? I've started now. I'm going to keep going. I might be there 20 minutes later and the job's done. The only requirement is the 5 minutes. These are tiny habits. Tiny habits are 30 seconds or less. So the principle's the same. Scale it back, see how you go, and then see where you take it. And that's the genius of tiny habits. It's the breaking life and actions and behaviors down into discrete, consecutive, if you like, certainly consistent behaviors and actions that lead to the big one. And, we know this from, let's say you're going to take up weightlifting. You wouldn't start by lifting 300-pound weights. You might start with 20 or 30 pounds and build up to it. Same with behaviors in our professional life. And it's just a matter of showing up, keeping it small, and this celebration point, feeling good about the thing. Remember, people change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. Just give you a quick example also about when I was talking about getting back to the simplicity changes behaviors thing. So in terms of behaviour design in Silicon Valley, I want you to think about this for a second, because as we think about our business, we think, what can I offer the competition aren't offering? How can I do it different than the competition? How can I differentiate and stand out? Well, let's part of the motivation bit for a second. Let's look at some of the most successful businesses in Silicon Valley and what they did. And many of these were informed by BJ Fogg's work. Let's look at Google. Google did not invent search. They didn't motivate people to search. They didn't say, hey, search, it's a great idea. People were already searching on the internet using Alta Vista and Yahoo and all the other tools there. What did Google do? They made it easier to do. All of the search engines were covered in ads, they were super busy. Google came out with a simple white page with a search box, and that was it. I think it's 1997, 99 or something. And one of the things we said that in terms of success in the business, everything big started small. It's really important this. Because if you can't get them to people to do a small thing, you'll never get them to do a big thing. So Google got people to search. Then they went into AdWords and Google Maps and YouTube and self-driving cars and you name it. But they started small by making it easier for people to do something they already wanted to do. So in behaviour design, there's two maxims. Help people do what they already want to do. Because I'm talking about your customers in the selling houses business. They already want to sell houses. How can you make it easier for them to do? You have to motivate them to sell a house. They already want to. How can you make it easier for them to choose you? So going back to Silicon Valley. So Google just made it easier to search. They didn't invent it. In a sense, they didn't offer anything other than the competitors doing this, offering search like lots of other people were doing, but they made it easier to do. When Uber came along, they didn't invent the idea of paying a driver to take you across town. Taxis have been around for years. They made it simpler to do. They didn't motivate people to use Uber. People already wanted a drive and they want to get the best price for it and they want to know when the car was going to come. So they had an app that made it simple and saw a diagram of the car coming. Airbnb did not invent the idea of paying someone to stay in their house. Bed and breakfast had been around for years. They made it simpler to do. Even Instagram didn't invent the idea of sharing photographs online. We had that. They made it easy. Instagram said, let's do it in 3 clicks, less clicks than anybody else can offer to share a photograph, make it easy. Simplicity changes behavior. And none of their customers, clients, users, audience had to be motivated to do the thing. There's another aspect of building your business using behavior design. Find people who already want to do the thing that you're offering. Because then you don't have to motivate them. They already want to do it. If you make it easy, great. But sometimes you just don't even know you're doing the thing. So remember we talked about motivation, ability, prompt. So if a behavior isn't happening or you're not getting the business, don't start by trying to motivate people. Start with the prompt. Do people know what you're offering? Do they know you're about? Do they know you're on the scene? And if you do, then go to ability. How can you make it easier to do? In the behavior design, there's 5 things you can call the ability chain. If the behavior isn't happening, one of the things in the ability chain might be broken. Do people have time to do the thing you want them to do? Read your newsletter, come in and chat to you or whatever. Yeah, maybe they have. Do they have the money? Are you more expensive? Is money an issue? Rich people, money's maybe not an issue. Do they have are they smart enough? Do they have the cognitive capability to realize this is a good deal? Or are you pitching to them when they're fried because they come home from a hard day at work or the kids are playing up? You just can't really think it through. Is it anything to do with physical ability or does it break their routine? So you can look at the ability, the spectrum of ability there, then is a way of saying, well, how can we make it? That's how you make things easier. Look at people's capability or ability to do the thing. So the prompt, try that. If that's all working, then it's how easy are you making it? And the last thing you look at is motivation, because motivation is great. You can get people to do hard things, but it goes up or down. So just to wrap up on the 3 sentences to think about is this. Help people do what they already want to do. So you don't have to worry about motivation. Make people feel successful when they're doing it. Or just think, that was a really great experience working like a estate agent, rather than those dickheads down the street who actually give me a really hard time. I hated working with them. You know, I'd actually sell my house and pay someone more to do it rather than work with the people I don't like. This is the likability part of behaviour. And then lastly, if you need to motivate people, maybe you have to look at that. but motivation is the last thing to do. And as I said, I was a professional in advertising and marketing, and I didn't know that. I was trying to motivate people to change for a big chunk of my career until I discovered that it's about making things easier and simpler to do.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So you talked about celebrating successes. Okay, what are the things that you can do to celebrate your success?
There's a few things. I mean, there's a whole spectrum of things, and it depends on the individual. A person deciding how they're going to, let's say, emote or generate a feeling of success themselves will be, there's thousands of ways of doing it, depending on the person. Some people are extroverts and they'll actually go, when I was learning tiny habits and doing exercise, I had a sort of a yoga mat. I work from home and I had a yoga mat out in the house. And whenever I walked through from the home office to the kitchen, I saw the yoga mat. I think, okay, there's the prompt. The yoga mat's lying there. What's the tiny behavior? I'll just go and do a stretch. Okay. What's the celebration going to be? I might put my hands up in the air like Rocky. I was on my own, so nobody do a scene. I've even put the Rocky theme on Spotify to prance around the kitchen while I'm making the coffee. So you can be extrovert about it. If you're an introvert, if you're a private person, you can do different things. Case in point would be, there's a time in my life, I used to have these terrible anxiety attacks in presentations. I'd be sat in a stuffy room full of people or in a boardroom or something like that, and I'd be sort of freaking out. And I thought, can I design tiny habits to be calmer, more at ease in meetings and things like that? So recipe was, after I feel that kind of panicky feeling in my chest, okay, that's the trigger, the prompt. I think, okay, what's the tiny behavior? I'll just watch my breath just for a second. I'll just sort of breathe a little bit deeper. All right, what's the celebration? I'll just pretend that I'm doing this. And I'm actually, people think I'm stretching or people think I'm just tapping my chest. I'm celebrating discreetly and quietly. So you can go, the whole celebration can be ostentatious. It can be super subtle and quiet. I worked with a guy for one time who was working on tiny habits for his health, an older guy, and he had the same celebration every single time. So if he was trying to get himself to drink more water or to eat healthier or to walk a little bit more than he was rather than taking the car, his celebration was absolutely the same every time. He thought, he got a mental picture of his granddaughter who was 3, she called Posey, and he thought of her. And he wanted to be around for her for a lot longer than he was going to do with the way he was going. And it made him feel great, and it released dopamine in him, and it kind of reinforced the idea that he would do that behavior again because it felt good. People change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. So celebration can be anything on that spectrum, Stephen.
And I love what you're saying there. It is about making yourself feel good. And obviously in the challenging times we all want to feel good. We all want to feel better. And we all have little wins and little celebrations. And actually, I like that little timer that you had before, because again, since I've read or listened to the book, I've been so much more productive as a result. But it's just by doing things in small chunks. So it may well be, actually, my office is a mess. So I'll put on my timer 15 minutes, and 15 minutes later it stopped, and actually my office looks a bit better. It may well be that I need to go in the garden and do something. I spend 15 minutes, that's it. Or I go onto LinkedIn. I've started splitting things down. So actually I feel good because I've done those 3 tasks, where actually I most probably wouldn't have done, maybe I would have done 1 if I'm lucky. And that's made a massive difference. And I feel so more productive as a person as a result of just simplifying it, to doing it in smaller chunks. And, again, there are people out here that may have projects on your websites, and it may be really, really scary. You're thinking, oh my good God, I've got to do my whole website. But if you just break it down and think, right, if I do the landing page, and let's spend 20 minutes on the landing page and getting the wording and the content that we want, then when you've done that bit, you're going to think, oh, that's great. I've done 1 bit of it. And then you can move on to the next bit and move on the next bit. And almost it just seems so much better as a result of that. And you feel good because you've achieved something.
Spot on, Stephen. You also raised 2 really interesting points that I should quickly expand on there. Is that I found that when I break things down to small doable, manageable things. And I feel quite good about it. There's two things happen there. One is when I see that I'm making progress, my motivation rises. Here's the thing. My motivation rises after I do the thing, not before. And I think what conditions as humans, I think what conditions think, oh no, I need to be motivated before I do the thing. I need to feel like it before I do the thing. But actually, if we shut out that voice in our head up and lead with our body and do the thing, we actually feel like it afterwards. And I'm glad I did it. We feel motivated. So that's one thing. And the other thing you're saying about the feeling, I won't call it elation, but the feeling of success when you've tidied that thing up, or you've done that first baby step on sorting that page out on the website, something really interesting happens there too. As we get these small, discrete wins, you know, it's better to have lots and lots of tiny multiple wins during the week than go after one massive big score win that you never get to and you feel defeated and deflated. Those tiny wins mount up. It's like an ecosystem of tiny wins. And here's an interesting thing that I noticed as well. My opinion of myself changed. It was almost as if my identity changed. You know, a lot of creative people like me are terrible procrastinators. We put things off to the last minute. And so I used to go through life thinking, my identity was, I am a terrible procrastinator. Waste of time sometimes, can never get things done, always leave to the last minute, blah, blah, blah. Another identity I had was, for example, I am the world's untidiest man. And my wife at one time would agree with you. He used to be the world's untidiest man. And actually, I used tiny habits around the house to try and deal with this. So as I said before, I work from home. And I thought, can I use tiny habits to be tidy around the house? Because my wife would sort of appreciate it. I know that. So I thought, okay, what do I say? What's the first little baby step tiny habits happening? And I thought, okay. So it was winter time, and I tend to have porridge every morning. And what happened is I'd make my porridge, eat my porridge, stick it in the bowl, throw the pan in the sink, go and have my porridge at the desk, crack on with work, lunchtime, have a sandwich, cup of coffee, throw it. My wife was coming home at the end of every day, a mountain of undone washing up in the sink, kitchen a bomb site. She was really unhappy about this. Rightly so. And I thought, I've got to change. I've been like this for years. So what do I do? Okay, start with one thing. What might be? The porridge. Let's start with the first thing in the morning. So I designed a tiny habit. After I put the porridge, remember recipes? After I put the porridge in the pan, I will wash up the saucepan and put it on the draining board. 30 seconds or less, remember? It's not a big deal. And it was like the porridge pan was good, and I tried it out and then did a little dance in the kitchen. Yeah, good to me. I felt good eating the porridge. And it was done. Next day, after I put the porridge in the pan, within 2 or 3 days, it became a habit. And I was washing the porridge pan up, and it was really great. And I felt really good about it. Now, here's the interesting thing. Over time, then, when I'd have a sandwich and a cup of coffee, I'd get in the same, I'd wash the thing up, stuff I knew I should be doing. It wasn't news to me, but I could get myself to do it because it was small. I'd do the thing. I'd feel really good about it and get back to it. But here's two interesting things. I'm not exaggerating. Within about 10 days, I tidied up every single time I had something in the kitchen. And that was great because my wife was coming home. She was thinking, this is brilliant. I'm glad he's doing this tiny habit. It's fantastic. That was the first thing. Same thing was this. It was absolutely freaking my wife out what had happened to this guy who'd been untidy his whole life. What has he got to hide? Is he up to something? Because he's different. So that was really cool. But the point is this. Is this what we call a ripple effect? When you see success in your life in one area, just a tiny area, like washing up the porridge pan, it grows into this because my identity changed. I changed from being the untidiest man in the world to someone that can be pretty tidy around the house. And with that, not only did my motivation rise to do it more, my confidence rose. Learning tiny habits, the biggest impact in my whole life was my confidence. My confidence, not just to change things once I put my mind to it, or not so much put my mind to it, but designed the changes in a very simple, sequential, systematic way. Tiny habits as a system. Everything changed for me. And then I started doing that at my desk. What calls do I need to make? What do I need to do on the website? What do I need to do in terms of accounts? What do I need to do in terms of user? How can I break it down into baby steps? But here's the interesting thing. Once I'd learned tiny habits, now, if I've got something that I need to do, sometimes I don't even bother with tiny habits because I know it's inevitable I'll do the big thing. So I'll just do the big thing. If it's 2 hours, 3 hours, half a day, I do it. Not every time, but like in a way that I never, ever did before. And that was
brilliant.
Insight.
And actually, I just want to welcome a couple of people. So hi, Eddie. Hi, Sarah. Thanks very much for joining it. And again, if I bring it back to agency and where we started off, you know, people prospecting to get properties on, and they don't want to make any calls. And, you know, and you said they just procrastinate. But actually, if you just make one call, that's a start. You know, that's a tiny habit. And then if you get something from that one call, you think, oh, you know what, let's make another call. And then you make another call, and all of a sudden you're making prospecting, which to me should be a habit, your most important habit in a estate agency. You need to be prospecting every day. So if it's challenging you doing that, you know, the tips you've just shared to do that. And I share a personal story with you as well. So my missus wasn't very happy at times when she came into the bathroom and the shower hadn't been wiped and cleaned. So my prompt was literally, when I go into the bathroom, I get the cloth, I get the spray, and when I come out of the shower, it's already there. Okay, so I know it's there. So the first thing that come out of the shower is spray it, get dry, and then it's done. And then I had exactly the same thing, noticing, hold on a second, what's going on? What are you doing? But again, it came because I listened to the audiobook, and actually not only do I feel better, but also I'm making my partner's feels a lot better, because then that way she doesn't have to have a little moan or a little dig that you haven't done this or haven't done that, or you haven't done your washing up. And it makes a big difference. And I think if you can start bringing that into your agencies as well, you know, and people are going to see what you're doing, then that's going to build your team up. That's going to build the confidence up of everybody as well. And again, it comes back to what you're saying. Everybody feels good. So Mrs. B feels good. I feel good because I'm not getting into trouble and stuff like that. Hi, Graham. Thanks very much for joining us. So it's, you know, it's great. Can I just come back on something, because I think what will help people, and I'm very conscious of time, and it seems like we're running out of time, and it's gone incredibly quickly, and I'm incredibly grateful, so thank you. You talk about influencing people's behavior, and obviously as estate agents and letting agents, we're going in every day and we're meeting vendors and we're meeting landlords and we're meeting buyers and we're meeting tenants. You know, and I've come across you know, people are different colors, so red, blue and green, and you mirror yourself and try and influence their behavior that way. Have you got any tips that you can share for when we're out there talking to people that will make a difference, please?
Not really my field, this stage thing, but I think I can. If it was me, like say I was doing things to develop my business, I get real clarity on what the person who I'm dealing with, the client, wants. What do they want? And what are they? One of the biggest problems that I have in my business is like so many tire kickers, where you actually waste so much time with people who are never going to give you business. You know, they didn't really have the motivation to work with me, and often they didn't even have the ability. You know, the actual fund, you know, they couldn't sign off the budget because it was below their pay grade and things like that. So I'd start with a Fogg behaviour model. I'd say, okay, get really clear on the aspirational outcome. What's the aspirational outcome for this meeting, for this making this call, for meeting these people, or whatever it is? What if I had a magic wand? What would a result look like here? Oh, they sign up, or they sign up for it. We become their state or whatever. So be really clear on what you want for the outcome. And then when you clear for that, reverse engineer and say, okay, do they have the motivation, ability to do what I want them to do? How can I make it easier for them to do? Like, you know, are we the best estate agency in the area for making it easier for potential clients to do the thing? And that can be anything from using tools or resources like have people book time with you or book meetings or something like that. How you follow up? Have you got you know, templated, you know, emails to send back to people for? How can you make people say that was really easy? That was really just enough. So that's part of it. Make it easy. This is not in behavior design or tiny habits, but I think it is. I think most people are aware. It's this likability thing. Do people like you and want to work with you? And that can be because you're super helpful, you're super nice, You're empathetic. You listen better than you talk, rather than pitching them all the time. So I think it's really finding a repertoire of skills that are really individual and unique to you that you can practice and hone and then apply as the circumstances allow. So you're designing your own behavior as much as anything. And I think the final bit would be, and something I'm increasingly doing in my business, I'm spending a massively disproportionate amount of my time now finding people that I want to work with that have the ability and motivation to work with me and that actually just didn't know I was around and what I was offering. So it's this forensically auditing who you're going to work with and putting more effort into that. That's kind
brilliant.
of
Thank you. Look, we've run out of time. I'm incredibly grateful for all the time that you've given and for sharing. If people want to get a hold of you, Mike,
yeah.
Find out more about the BJ Fogg model and find out more about what you, how do they get a hold of you?
Just I search Mike Coulter on Google. That will find my LinkedIn profile. At Mike Coulter, MikeCoulter, and social media. Just reach out to me there, and just search. Just go to tinyhabits.com if you want to find out more about Tiny Habits. There's probably a link there to BJ Fogg's behaviour design work. Or just, I think Stephen, you're going to put this stuff on LinkedIn and elsewhere on social.
Yeah.
We'll put some links there that people can click on.
Okay, brilliant. Well, look, thanks very much for your time. Thank you all for watching this afternoon, or listening this afternoon, or listening on replay, or watching on replay. I'm really grateful. Next week, next Tuesday morning, I'm going to be joined by Daniel Spencer, who's an Australian real estate coach, and he's going to join me at 7:30 a.m. So look forward to you joining me now. And then I'm also going to be joined next Thursday by Peter Rawlings, ex-Foxtons and ex-Marsh & Parsons, which I'm looking forward to. So thanks very much again for watching. Thanks for watching on replay. Have a lovely Thursday afternoon. Mike, thank you once again for being a fantastic guest and for giving up your time. Incredibly grateful.
A pleasure anytime, Stephen. Thank you for asking.